I think the pay allows you 9 months of whatever your stat maternity pay is. It's going to be different for everyone depending on how much you earn and how much you've declared on your taxes and things like that. But just because you can get maternity pay for 9 months, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can afford to take 9 months off from your business. Whether that is for financial reasons or because you're a little bit worried about what happens when you disappear for 9 months. For me, this is definitely a concern. I'm fairly active on social media, less so lately because I have been so busy with the client work, but I don't feel as though I can just stop my marketing for 9 months. Because then what happens at the end of that 9 months, then when you come back, you have no clients lined up, nobody knows where you've been. Maybe you've let them know that you're going on a maternity leave, but I don't think it's very realistic for most of us to just disappear for 9 months. So what do you do? When you are collecting maternity allowance, you are allowed 10 keeping in touch days over that period. So if you are going to take off 9 months, you get a day a month, I suppose, or plus a little bit. If you are only taking 6 months, you could maybe do a day and a half in a month. But realistically, that, you know yourself, a day and a half over a month is not enough time to do all of your marketing or completely stay in touch. It is something though. So if you kind of spread that out and say, okay, I'm going to do a couple of hours every week where I can just go on social media and engage a little bit, maybe answer some emails. That is one option. Another option might be to do some outsourcing. So I have 2 fabulous VAs. One helps me a little bit more on the website side of things. She is great with the technical aspects of my business. So shout out to Sarah at Weeva UK. Sarah has been working with me for a while now, and she's kind of helped me get both of my websites up to scratch, but she also keeps things up to date. She does blog submissions for me, a little bit of content creation as well. So knowing that I have Sarah on hand to do any sort of website related work, or if I want some blog submissions to happen while I'm on a break, I can kind of leave that in her capable hands. That is wonderful. And I also have a new VA who I have just started working with over the last few weeks, but somebody who's business I have, I guess, been engaged with for quite some time. So Emily has just started doing some work for me. She is going to help sort of manage my inbox and check-ins with clients and invoicing and things like that, especially for my wedding and family business, because I do have quite a lot of wedding work booked in for next year, just to make sure that my couples don't feel like they're falling out of touch. She will be there on hand to answer any new inquiries that come in as well. And knowing that I have people in place to kind of stay on top of things is such an amazing peace of mind for me, because I think trying to wrap my head around keeping a newborn busy and making sure that my 4-year-old has everything she needs and all the attention she needs, and also staying on top of emails and messages and marketing, it just feels like far too much, and probably is far too much, especially with a new baby in the house and knowing how hands-on that can be. So thinking about if there's anything with your business that you can outsource, and specifically maybe inbox management and a little bit of marketing, social media stuff, even if you still want to make your own content. So my plan is that I will batch create a bunch of content before this baby arrives, and hopefully once every couple of weeks or once a month set a few hours aside to stay on top of it, send that content over to Emily, and then she will take care of scheduling and posting it for me. So again, I'm still staying quite involved in my business, but I have other people that can kind of manage the day-to-day, and that means that I can take a break without disappearing completely for 6 months or 9 months. And then when I am ready to go back, I have still kept up a presence online. I've still kept up answering messages, and I hopefully have enough work in the diary through whatever inquiries have come in during that time that I feel I have a manageable workload to go back to when I am ready. going back to that question of how much time can you really take off from your business, that is going to look different for everybody. For me, I am going to try to take between 5 and 6 months pretty much completely off. Aside from that kind of time, like I said, checking in. Obviously, I will still be on hand if my virtual assistants need any help, or if anybody, any of my clients need to reach me, need to chat something through. I have those keeping in touch days. I have that time to use, a day or day and a half every month until I'm ready to go back part-time. And that is how I'm going to ease myself back into it. It worked really well for me last time, taking a few months pretty much completely off and then going back very part-time on my own terms, what works for me, and slowly building up from there. Again, though, what I learned last time is this needs to be flexible because you don't really know how you're going to feel. So last time I thought that I might want to take longer off completely from working. But what I realized is that for me, a mix of mum time and sort of professional time or career time is really, really important for me. I started to lose myself a little bit, feeling like I was a full-time mum, and not that there is anything wrong with that. My mum stayed home with me and my sister when we were little until we were kind of school age. And I think that is the hardest job, being a stay-at-home mum. I think it's very rewarding, but it's incredibly difficult and often quite thankless. And, it's not something I look down on in any way. However, I know that for me, mentally, I need the mix. I do not do well with being only a mum. I need the grown-up time. I need the sort of creative time with my business. And I've worked so hard to build both businesses up to where they are. I'm just not wanting to let that go. And I think that's okay. You have to do what works for you, and you have to find your own balance. And I think being flexible and saying, okay, I'm going to take 4, 5, 6 months off completely in my case, and then I'm going to go back part-time for a few months, and then I'm going to build it up from there, and just leaving that as open-ended as possible and being careful not to overbook myself with work right off the bat, so that I have the flexibility to pick and choose based on how I'm feeling about being back at work and finding a new balance for our family. So I've talked now a little bit about trying to plan on when to start a maternity leave, how to manage your business during that time, whether it's using those keeping in touch days or doing some outsourcing or a little bit of both. And I should add in there that for some people, they will decide that they are just going to take off 6 months or a year or however long it is completely. I know quite a few other women who have done that with their business, who basically just said, I am due in October, for example, and I will not be reachable for a year. I am taking a break off completely to become a mum, and doing that one social media post that lets everybody know they're on maternity leave, turning an out of office on, and just leaving it at that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. If that works for you and you feel comfortable with that for your business, that's absolutely fine. But if you are like me, you might find that a sort of flexible schedule works really well for you. And I think for me and for the type of business, well, for both of my businesses and the sort of industries that I'm in, I am just going to be honest, and I am going to share the process. So for my Rhiannon Neil wedding and family work, all of my couples and families who have kind of already booked in with me for next year, whether that's for newborn sessions for babies kind of due in the first half of the year, or for weddings that are happening next year, I have let everybody know that I'm expecting a baby and that I will not be uncontactable, that, they can get in touch with me if they need to, but that I will be kind of on a maternity leave from October through until the spring and then coming back part-time. They know that they are still able to get in touch with me, but that I might not be as quick to respond as I normally will be. And being honest and just letting people know the situation and checking in, as much as I will batch create some content, I also plan on just checking in as and when on social media, letting people know what I'm up to, sharing some cute baby photos, obviously, and just being honest about where things are at and how I'm feeling and what kind of a workload I'm willing to take on. I'm just going to share that information as as it becomes available, as I work through it myself, because it's really hard to know how I'll feel until we get there. Even having been through this before, I think going from having one child to two is going to be different, and it's hard to know how the baby will be. I mean, some babies are relatively easy and sleep really well, and others are the complete opposite. So I'm going into this totally open-minded, and I'm just going to be as honest and open as I can about how I'm juggling everything and how I plan on working moving forward. For the branding side of my business, I think it'll be even easier to do this because I speak so much already about juggling motherhood and entrepreneurship, because most of the people I work with are women, and many of whom are parents or who are thinking about starting families. I think it'll just be really relatable, and being honest with people about my limitations, about what I need, about what I'm capable of taking on, while also being mum to a baby and a 4-year-old it's just part of what I do. And, you know, if you've been following me for a while and you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you will know that I believe wholeheartedly in being open and honest about things and not sugarcoating and not pretending that life is perfect and only sharing the highlight reel. I think it's so important to talk about the challenges of entrepreneurship, and especially as a woman and as a mother. It's no easy feat trying to juggle all of these things, and I really don't think it helps anybody to pretend that it is easy. So that was kind of the basis for starting this podcast. Starting the podcast in the first place, you know, to kind of talk about the challenges of business ownership and share as much sort of tips and perspective, not just my own experience, but from others who are also self-employed experts in different areas. And it was kind of the inspiration for starting this mini series of the podcast as well, because the more that I speak honestly about the things that I find tough, whether it's motherhood in general, or, you know, over the past few months with this pregnancy and trying to juggle all of these things, the more connected I felt with people, the more engagement I've had on my content. People appreciate honesty, especially in a world where, you know, you look online and see everybody's highlight reel. And I think having these conversations about what has been tough and what has worked well for us and sharing those experiences just brings us all closer together, and also helps kind of spread the ideas and spread the knowledge across the spectrum. The last thing that I wanted to talk about on the subject of sort of pregnancy and planning for maternity leave with a business is self-expectation and the pressure that we put upon ourselves. So I've talked a lot in this episode about planning ahead and trying to think of, you know, any possible outcome, and determining, I guess, how you want to work your maternity leave and how you want to plan your time off when the baby comes. But what I haven't really spoken about is those expectations that we put on ourselves. And I say that because from my own experience anyways, I put a lot of pressure on myself, especially during this pregnancy, to keep up with everything that I was doing already, plus a much busier workload, all while trying to grow a human being, which, when I lay it out like that, seems completely ridiculous and unnecessary, but in my head felt like the only way I could do things. I didn't feel like I could say no to work because I will be going on mat leave. So I need to plan for that, and I need to take on as much work as possible before I go on mat leave. Not just, you know, so that I have some money sitting there to kind of help supplement maternity leave, but also so that I have content to share, and so that, you know, I make up for the experience that I'll be missing in the few months that I take off. I put the expectations on myself to get everything out in a normal sort of turnaround time. So editing photos and things, you know, from a photography perspective, everybody thinks you show up and you do the shoot and that's it. But the editing actually takes a lot longer than the shooting does. And, you know, when I have a regular workload, maybe a couple of shoots or a wedding and a shoot in a week, I know that I have a certain turnaround time, but if you double or some weeks triple that workload, there's no way I can expect to have the same turnaround time with editing. Of course, at some point there's going to be a bit of a backlog, but I put it on myself that I need to keep up with my usual turnaround times. And again, these are pressures that I put on myself.